Okay. Um, Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's forum on how to be part of the plastic pollution solution. It is really exciting that so many of you are interested in this topic and are willing to put some time into learning more with us tonight. My name is Donna Staten, and I am a board member on GreenTown Los Altos. Next slide, Margie. I'm also a pediatrician with a particular interest in environmental health. And um, I also volunteer with the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Environmental Health. Um, and it just happens to be today the sixth annual International Children's Environmental Health Day. So what a perfect day to have this seminar. Also speaking tonight is Margie Suazo, who is one of the founding members of GreenTown Los Altos. She has a master's in public administration and environmental sciences. And Kim Jelfs from GreenTown is also going to be our chat moderator for our question and answer session at the end. And it is a great honor to have with us tonight Heidi Sanborn, who was the founding director of the National Stewardship Action Council, and she's the current executive director. And she also chairs our California State Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling. And she's going to be talking a little bit later this evening about the exciting but exhausting legislative session that just finished up in Sacramento, and what some of our wins were, and how we have to hit the ground running for the next session starting soon. So we're very happy and thrilled that Heidi could join us tonight. Next slide. Just a quick word about GreenTown. We are a completely volunteer organization, and we work to protect the environment of Los Altos and Los Altos Hills here locally. And we do this through community engagement, education, and advocacy, while contributing to and leveraging broader environmental health efforts. So we have our website up there, and I invite all of you later to check it out and consider joining us. Next slide. We work in 5 program areas: transportation, clean air, eating green, conservation, and of course, zero waste. Next slide. And our program tonight, just to give you a quick overview, it's roughly divided into 2 parts. In the first half, we're going to take a broader look at the problem of plastic pollution and a broader look at where we can have impacts on trying to solve the problem. And then in the second part of the program, we're going to talk a little more specifically about actions that you can take at the individual level at home and in your personal life, and also actions that we can take collaboratively at the advocacy and legislative level to have even more impact. So again, we'll just have a question and answer period at the ends. We'd like you to hold your questions until the end, although you can put them in the chat box, and if they're for a particular speaker, just indicate that in your question. And we are also going to take a little bit of time at the end to hear from you, hopefully, what your personal commitments are going to be to making a change to reduce plastic in your life. And we'll do this via the chat box. We're also going to pick our raffle winner and offer ways for you to stay involved. And this last bullet point is really, really important. We are going to send everybody who registered a follow-up email, a pretty comprehensive packet of resources for how to learn more and how to do more in this area. So look for that email next week. And if you didn't register, no worries. There's my email on the screen at GreenTown there. So just send me an email and I'll be sure that you get the information packet as well. We hope that you'll use that information really as a toolkit for staying involved and doing more. Next slide. Okay, let's jump right to the problem. When we talk about the problem of plastic pollution, I think this is the image that comes to mind for most people. Next slide. An unimaginably large amount of plastic enters our oceans every year. And in fact, the quantity of plastic entering the oceans is expected to quadruple by the year 2025. And we can't even handle the amount that's there now. One research study has predicted that by the year 2050, there's going to be more plastic than fish in the oceans. Next slide. There we go. The point I want to make here is that all that plastic debris that we see floating on the surface of the ocean is really just the tip of the iceberg for a much more sinister and complex problem that's going on beneath the surface. And I'm going to try to explain that here. I think a lot of you are probably already familiar with the effects on marine life that involve mechanical effects of birds and fish getting entrapped in plastic or strangulated by plastic. Marine life also eat the plastic in the ocean thinking that it's food, and that leads to full stomachs that contain no nutrition. So animals starve to death. It can also cause gastrointestinal obstruction, which is a very painful way for an animal to die. But there may be something that you're not aware of or that you're less aware of. And as you know, plastics don't biodegrade. They don't just melt away into the environment. They only break down into smaller and smaller and smaller bits and pieces. And as these bits and pieces of plastic float around in the ocean, they act like magnets or sponges, and they actually absorb all the other pollutants and chemicals that are floating around in the ocean from other sources. So they're like little Trojan horses that, when eaten by marine life, release chemicals into the system of the animal that's eaten them. And the chemicals that come out of these plastic particles are not just the pollutants picked up in the ocean, but also the chemicals that are used in manufacturing the plastics in the first place. Next slide. So there we saw previously all the effects that plastics can have in the ocean. What about the effect that plastic manufacturing has on the air that we're breathing, and the connection that plastic production has to climate change? I think the key point to remember here, 99% of plastic is made from fossil fuels, particularly fracked methane, which is also known as natural gas. And the greenhouse gases that are emitted at each step of the life cycle along the way, from extraction to degradation, contribute to climate change. Next slide. This is a picture of an ethane cracker plant in Pennsylvania. And because the fossil fuel industry is shifting its focus to build more plastic manufacturing plants, we are also building out an infrastructure to handle this. And this is a cracker plant is called a cracker plant because the ethane gas that is taken from underground is heated to extraordinarily high temperatures and actually cracked into ethylene. And the ethylene is then polymerized into long chains of compounds or polymers. And that is how polyethylene is formed. And polyethylene is the major component, the raw feedstock for making plastic. And next slide.
Sorry, it's sticking a little bit.
Oh yeah, you know what, Margie, you could just go back one slide. I want to make one other point. No, back.
So
Okay.
we have a couple slides here that it looks like my mouse missed. Are you doing this slide?
No, back. Sorry, folks. Just back up to the cracker plant. Okay, one more. Yeah, that's a little strange. Okay.
All right, it's bouncing around a little bit.
It is, yeah. Oh, okay, stop. Sorry, folks. We'll get it in just a second. Just back one more, Margie. I wondered what happened.
It's skipping.
Yeah, it is. Okay. All right.
I don't know why. I'm sorry.
All right, one more. Well, and anyway, that's all right. Just go on to the next. There, stop there, Margie. This is great. So, the last slide showed you that there's a lot of greenhouse gases produced all along the way in the process of making plastics. And in fact, if plastics were a country, it would be number 5 in rank among emitters of greenhouse gases, behind China, the US, India, and Russia. Now, we all know that most developed countries are reducing, or at least trying to reduce, their greenhouse gas emissions to reduce the effects of climate change. And so, what do you think the fossil fuel industry is thinking about that as we shift away from using fossil fuels for energy and electricity and transportation? They have a plan B. Okay, let's see if that's the correct next slide. There we go. I think we're back on track. Sorry. So, as the fossil fuel industry realizes that the demand is going to be reduced for their products, since we're going to be using less and less for transportation and gasoline and fuel and heating, etc., their plan B is to continue their production and increase their production of fossil fuels to be used in the manufacture of more and more and more plastic. Next slide. Okay, so while we're making all these efforts to reduce plastic, the fossil fuel industry is making efforts to increase plastic. And in fact, by 2050, they'll probably be making 4 times as much plastic as they were in 2013. And nearly all of the plastic produced annually, of all the plastic produced annually, nearly 40% of it is used just for single-use plastic items and plastic packaging. And we all know that not a lot of plastic is actually recycled. Only about 8 or 9% of plastic gets recycled, no matter how much of it you put into your blue bin. So we can do all the beach cleanups we can. We can try to improve our rates of recycling, but we're never going to really tackle the problem unless we tackle it at its source and try to reduce plastic from being produced in the first place. Next slide. And moreover, some of those gains that we're going to be making in climate change by reducing greenhouse gases are going to be offset by all these new ethane cracker plants, because they are super emitters of greenhouse gases. Next slide. These people that you see here live in St. James Parish in Louisiana, and they are protesting the planned construction of a giant petrochemical and plastic making facility known as Formosa. And it turns out that if this plant goes on to be built, it will be the largest new source of greenhouse gases in the entire country. Now, what do you think it's like living next to a petrochemical plant like that? Next slide. It turns out that these residents know because they live in what's called Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is a part of the Mississippi River, about 85 miles long between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And these people who live there have a 50 times higher rate of developing cancer than the average American citizen. Next slide. And there are very serious effects that have been well documented on these so-called frontline communities, people living close to these types of plants. And proximity studies, as they're called, have found increased health risks due to all the chemicals that are emitted into the air, such as volatile organic compounds like benzene and xylene and toluene, also nitrogen oxide compounds, which contribute to the formation of ground level ozone and particulate matter, which are really bad for asthma and respiratory problems. And they're also exposed to formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen. So there are a lot of physiological problems that people have an increased risk for experiencing if they live close to these sites. But I also want to point out that it's been shown that living next to these big petrochemical plants also has an effect and takes a toll on residents' mental health as well. And because plastic production contributes to climate change, and because fence line communities are typically lower income and often communities of color, this makes plastic production not only a pollution problem, but an environmental justice problem as well. Next slide. And really, you don't have to live next to a plastic manufacturing plant in order to experience health effects from plastic. We all can be affected by the chemicals that are in the plastics that we use. For example, and that's because these chemicals that are used in the manufacture of plastic leach out into the liquid or food that we are eating or drinking contained in these plastic containers. So you probably all are familiar with BPA. That's a bisphenol A compound that was actually taken out of baby bottles because it was shown to affect brain development. It and its chemicals like it, like bisphenol S and other bisphenols, affect fertility. Maybe some of you are aware of phthalates. These are endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're added to plastic in the manufacture process to make it softer and flexible. But when we are exposed to phthalates, it can affect testosterone and estrogen hormones. It can reduce sperm counts and it can affect thyroid function. Another important class I'd like to point out are all of the perfluorinated compounds. These are called PFAS chemicals, and PFAS is not just one chemical, it is a group of about 2,000 chemicals that are known to affect metabolism, increase the risk for cancer, and these two are endocrine disrupting chemicals. It can be a little overwhelming if you really start to think about what we are exposing ourselves and our children to, and certainly research is helping us sort this out. But I recommend that everybody read this 2-pager that was put out by the Endocrine Society recently. It's going to be included in your packet of information because it very succinctly goes through the major 7 harmful chemicals that come in plastic, how we're exposed to them, and what you can do to avoid it. So if you're a little overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, this is a great article to read to get started.
And will that be included in the packet, Donna?
And that's in the packet, yes.
Okay.
So look for that in your email next week. Okay, next slide, Margie. And I also want to make the point that there's a lot we still don't know about the effects of these chemicals. We need a lot more research. Only about 250 of the more than 60,000 synthetic chemicals have actually been directly tested by regulators. And here in the US, unlike in the EU, manufacturers are allowed to add chemicals to products and put them out on the market before they're even tested to see if they're dangerous. So we need a lot more research, and I think especially research done in children. And just on the right, you'll see a picture of 3 books. These are 3 of my favorites. And if you're a parent, I definitely recommend in particular the one in the middle that's put out by the Academy of Pediatrics, and the one on the left written by my colleague in Boston, Phil Landrigan, about protecting your children from harmful chemicals. Next. So again, I mentioned this is a big, big topic, and we've gone through a lot of things really quickly, and it can be a little bit overwhelming of knowing exactly where to start. So if you asked me for my top 5 things to read or do in the near future, it would be these 5 things. First of all, watch The Story of Plastic. This is an incredible documentary. It was just awarded an Emmy award for best writing, and it's actually free if you watch it before the end of November. So put that on your calendar. You might even want to consider having a screening party where you and some of your friends watch it together and then talk about it. Number 2, I think most people trust Consumer Reports. They're familiar with it. They recently came out with just a 2-part article. And the first part covers the problem with plastics. The second part tells you how to quit plastic. And it's really well written, and I think very, very helpful. Number 3, I would recommend that you subscribe to the Plastic Pollution Coalition newsletter. It comes out every month. The Plastic Pollution Coalition has a terrific website chock full of resources. And they also do a webinar every month about some aspect of plastic and plastic pollution. And they're all good. And the recordings can be found on their website. Number 4, if you really want to take a deep dive into learning more about this, you could take this class. I took it last semester, and I highly recommend it. It's online, so anybody can take it. But it's out of Bennington College in Vermont. And Judith Engt teaches this. And she's a former EPA administrator from the Obama administration. She's amazing. It meets on Wednesday evenings for 2 hours, just for 7 weeks. So a group of us at GreenTown are thinking that we will take this class together and use it as a sort of a book club for learning more and discussing with each other. So you're welcome to join us on that. And lastly, consider volunteering with the GreenTown Zero Waste team. We try to have an effect locally in reducing the plastics that are in our environment here in Los Altos and Los Altos Hills, and we would love your help and your suggestions. So next slide. I'm just going to leave you with 4 key takeaways. If you don't learn anything else tonight, I would suggest focusing on this. First of all, plastic is a petroleum product deeply connected to oil and gas extraction, and therefore to climate change and its social and environmental injustices, all those things that go along with climate change. Recycling is not going to be the answer to solving this problem. There are serious health effects both to humans and wildlife from the chemicals that are used in plastic, yet we can take individual actions ourselves to protect us and our families, and we can take collective action to result in policies that will protect us all and protect the environment. So those are my key takeaways, and I'm going to stop there and turn the program over to Margie.
Oh my gosh, Donna. That's a hard act to follow and a very dire one. All right. So, in order to understand the solutions to this crisis that Donna has really well articulated and where we might begin to address the problem, we need to understand the system in which it occurs. So we need a little bit of background, I think, on the plastics supply chain, but my thing is not getting to the right. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see the steps on the slide. Donna mentioned them briefly as we go from extraction to production to distribution to sale to consumption and ultimately to waste. Note that this is a very linear system, right? Take, make, waste. Right? The first step was, again, it bounced. The first step kind of takes, is the fossil fuel extraction step. Taking material that's been storing carbon in the earth for millions and millions of years, right? And pulling it out for use in products that are often have a very short lifespan. The fossil fuel industries saw the writing on the wall. Donna also alluded to this, where fuel sales were going down and the winds were changing. Consumers were demanding more renewable sources of energy. So the industry moved to plan B, right, which is this where plastic, and particularly single-use plastic, was what they were going to use to ramp up their fossil fuel sales. So plastics are manufactured in a variety of ways and to meet a lot of different needs, right? There's not really a one size fits all product. They're in your car, they're in your carpet, your electronics, tons of kids' toys, in lots of your clothes. You may drink out of plastic. Most of your food is packaged in it, and not to mention you probably throw your waste away in a plastic bag. We hope not, of course, but it's pretty ubiquitous. And all these plastic products get distributed. This jumped to, here we go. These products get distributed by ship, truck, or plane to a warehouse or a store where fancy signage and alluring marketing material encourage you to buy more stuff, and particularly more plastic stuff, preferably with lots of plastic packaging. The good news is that as a consumer, you can choose. Right? According to The Story of Stuff, which is an educational film that we highly recommend, only 1% of consumer products are in use 6 months after they're purchased. Some of this is deliberate planned obsolescence by the manufacturers, which is just so kind of upsetting as a part of the system. So if we do buy plastic or something packaged in plastic, and at its end of its short life, how do we get rid of it? The cycle shows landfill, incineration, recycling, right? Well, most plastics aren't that easily recyclable. And as Donna mentioned, only a fraction actually gets recycled. Those that are recycled are typically downcycled, meaning that they're used to create a lower value or a lower grade plastic product. And they can be recycled a max of 2 to 3 times before really just becoming plastic waste. Furthermore, the markets for used plastic are a veritable mess, right? Complicated by the fact that a number of years ago, just a few years ago, China elected to no longer accept most plastic waste. So instead, it goes to an array of countries with different standards for managing the waste. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, in fact, who used to take plastic waste, have restricted imports of plastic waste. So Vietnam and Laos are handling a good fraction of the world's plastic waste. I say handling in quotes because we don't know always how successful that is. So it's pretty dire, but that's where you come in. As an individual, the first thing you can do is get educated. And we, as Donna alluded to, have a number of resources and action items that we recommend that you start with. We'll send that all in a packet next week. I know Donna listed top 5 educational resources, which is great. The next is to vote with your dollars, right? Say no to plastic. Right? Start by asking yourself, do I need to buy this? And the answer is probably no. You know, can I borrow it or make it? And at the end of the product's life, can I reuse it, repurpose it, or truly recycle it? You can influence others. Talk to your friends about what you're doing and why. You don't have to proselytize if that's not your nature, but just be an example and be sure to have a response if they ask. You can also let your workplace or school, the shops you go to, the companies whose products you buy, and the restaurants that you support know that you'd like packaging or dining ware to be plastic free and to have reusable options instead of single-use plastic items. And finally, you can advocate for policies that affect different parts of the plastic supply chain. All right, we'll talk about which options are available next, and we'll hear more from Heidi about some specific options where you can weigh in. So you as an individual can have direct impact on what you purchase and what you throw away and how, and an indirect impact by advocating for policies and practices that influence players further up the plastic supply chain. We've talked about some of the things that we can do as consumers or as non-consumers, and as the case may be, but what about other players such as governments and businesses? What can they do about the plastic supply chain? So our government has a lot of tools in its toolbox, and it's in a much better position to exert influence over businesses in the plastic supply chain. And it is their job to protect the environment and human health. So first and foremost, the government can establish a shared vision that represents our values as a society. I'm just gonna admit Don Whedon there. And some of these might be things like carbon reduction or carbon neutrality goals, waste reduction like zero waste goals, or circular economy. So this can be done at the local, federal, state, and even global governmental levels. Oops. Hold on. Then our government has a suite of tools to reward or incentivize carrots and sticks, or vice versa, sticks and carrots in that case. Good behavior to discourage the unwanted behaviors in order for us to meet the vision that's been laid out. Some of these are financial instruments, taxes and fees, such as carbon taxes, landfill tipping fees, pay as you throw waste systems, where you pay more for a larger waste container. And container deposit laws are financial instruments that the government can use to compel the behavior that they're looking for. Legislative mandates and regulations are another option, and we'll get into a couple of those. And some of them include things like state recycling requirements. So the state may require the county to meet a minimum percentage recyclable requirements, as well as extended producer responsibility. So I'm going to talk about just a couple of specific types of legislation that affects different parts of the plastic supply chain. And the first is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which is essentially a carbon tax that would be imposed at the federal level. This targets fossil fuel companies. So it's the first step in our plastic supply chain. It puts a fee on carbon production, right, which discourages fossil fuel extraction and encourages, hopefully, a shift to other less carbon intensive sources like renewables. And it's intended to internalize the cost of carbon pollution into the cost of fossil fuels. This issue of environmental externalities is one of the main reasons why governments use taxes and fees in environmental policies. So, and it has an innovative feature, which is that it returns the fee to consumers in a monthly carbon cashback dividend. This is currently in the legislation HR 2307 for those of you who are interested in the details. Another tool that's been used to encourage less waste and better recycling is extended producer responsibility. This targets the producers of consumer products, so it's a little further down the plastic supply chain. And as the name suggests, it extends the producer's responsibilities for products and packaging through the waste disposal stage. It tends to encourage product manufacturers to design their products with the environment in mind and increase the rate of reuse and recycling. So for countries in Europe, at least in one article that I read, with EPR laws, and maybe Heidi, you can speak to this later, packaging waste recycling rates are on the order of 85 to 90%, which is crazy good. So that's very encouraging. And there are certainly examples of this in other waste streams. Most of you can go to your hardware store and return compact fluorescent light bulbs, for example, right? And there's some exciting movement on EPR for packaging waste, which you'll hear more about, hopefully from Heidi. Another tool that has been used in the US are bans on the sale and use of certain products. These bans target mostly product sellers, not exclusively, which again is a little further down the plastic supply chain. They can be implemented at many levels of government and ensure that a product won't be sold in a given jurisdiction, at least legally. So for example, in 2013 and 14, Los Altos passed bans on polystyrene foam and on plastic bags, respectively. Prior to that bag ban, GreenTown conducted exit interviews on reusable bag use and found that 90% of store patrons had reusable bags, but only 20% remembered or chose to bring them to the store. So voluntary action was simply not enough to make a big difference. The mandate was necessary to really reduce the single-use bag use. So these policies that I've outlined, carbon fees, extended producer responsibility, product bans, work together with other policies to encourage more of a circular economy instead of that linear take, make, waste economy in the current plastic supply chain, which I shared earlier. So the World Economic Forum defines a circular economy as an industrial system that is restorative or regenerative by intention and design. It replaces an extractive approach to production with restoration, shifts towards the use of renewable energy, eliminates the use of toxic chemicals which impair reuse, and aims to eliminate waste through the superior design of materials, products, systems, and business models. And I know that sounds like a lot, but if you're designing for the environment, you're also thinking about what happens to that product at the end of its life. So key elements include creating products that are reusable, repairable, and modular, right? Reducing or eliminating toxins and waste materials in the process. Designing the products with the end of life in mind, as I mentioned. So some businesses have gotten on board and are starting to step up, which is very encouraging. The first image on the left is folks with reusable PATH water bottles made of lightweight aluminum, which are both reusable and fully recyclable. It's from a company that started at Hayward State University by some students. On the top right are some products from Loop Industries, which is working with some big consumer product manufacturers to create packaging that's returnable, such as the Haagen-Dazs ice cream in aluminum containers or metal containers that are returnable and will be reused. They're planning to test this in several markets. I'm not sure of the current status. And on the bottom right is an Adidas shoe that's made from recovered ocean plastic. So the great news is that some businesses have entered the circular economy. They're testing products and packaging through testing products and packaging that use secondary materials and or are 100% recyclable or reusable. So now I will hand it off to Donna to kick off the next part of our presentation.
Okay, great. So up till now, we've been sort of taking a big picture look at the overall problem and a big picture look at the strategies of where we might want to employ solutions. Now we're going to get practical and talk about things, really concrete things that you and I can do starting tomorrow to make a difference. So next slide, Margie.
Drink of water.
Okay, so first of all, I think we all need to shift our mindset a little bit. It used to be kind of simple: reduce, reuse, recycle. But now we have to start to incorporate other options as well. Certainly refuse. Let's all try to reduce our consumption in the first place. We of course want to reduce but reusing, refilling, repairing, repurposing, regifting. As we start to do more of these things, we're going to reduce our consumption in general and reduce our consumption of plastic a lot. Next slide. Okay, so it's great to get educated on all the things you can do around the house to avoid using plastic. And the good news is there are people who are like really passionate about this, and they have written about it, and they will share their advice and tips, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So these books that you see here are suggested, and we'll reference them in our follow-up packet. There are also a number of really, really good websites that take you step by step on how to make your own cleaning products and how to make your own cosmetic products and things like that. Some of those are listed here. And also, it is great to find one or two newsletters that you really find interesting and helpful, because you'll get updated information right in your inbox. So luckily, you can learn from others to get started. Next, Margie. So we all need to change our shopping habits. There's the so-called hierarchy of needs. If you imagine a pyramid, what we want to be doing most of the time, the large layer on the bottom of the pyramid, is use what we already have. And then if we don't have something we need, think about borrowing or swapping or getting it at a secondhand shop or donating what we don't use anymore to a secondhand shop or a thrift shop. A lot of times we can make what we need, and the buying piece, the little tip at the top of the pyramid, should be our last option. And there are a lot of networks and organizations that will help you share items so they don't get wasted and put in the landfill. And freecycle.org is a good example. People do this on Nextdoor. There's Buy Nothing Los Altos. So again, we'll have a section on this in our follow-up handout. But whenever possible, just simply try to buy things that aren't plastic. You can do this in retail stores. I visited the Ecology Center in Berkeley not so long ago, and it was very exciting to see all the different kinds of office supplies and children's toys and clothing and backpacks, all there that you could buy that have nothing to do with plastic. If you want to do online shopping, I really recommend Life Without Plastic. It's a really terrific website, and has a lot of things that we currently use out of plastic that they make not in plastic, out of wood, out of fiber, bamboo, glass, and stainless steel. Thirdly, try to swap out plastic packaging for items, ideally, that have no packaging. Don't buy your lettuce in a plastic clamshell when you can simply buy a head of lettuce and put it into your cloth bag and take it home. Most of all, when you have to buy things in containers, try to really focus on glass, paper, and aluminum, because glass, paper, and aluminum are really, truly recyclable. There are great markets for these. And just for example, if you go to make an aluminum can and you use recycled aluminum cans, you'll use 87% less energy than if you made that aluminum can from raw materials. Lastly, I bet most of you are already bringing your own bags when you go shopping, but don't forget to bring bags that you can use for produce as well. You can bring your containers to some stores and buy in bulk, and you can also shop at refill stores, and there are a number of them in our area. Next slide. I just visited this feel-good store in Berkeley, and it was really an eye-opening experience for me, and I'm interested in this. So what you do, next slide, is you bring your jar, your bottle, your can, whatever, and you weigh it, and then you fill it up with the product of your choice, whether it's laundry detergent or dishwashing soap or hand cream or shampoo or conditioner or whatever. And then they weigh it again and you pay for the product that you purchase. They also have, if you notice in those little boxes underneath that table there, people collect and donate their old jars, so that if somebody walks by the store and comes in and wants to buy something and they didn't bring their own container, you can just have one of those for free. So it's a great place to visit if you're in the Berkeley area. Next slide.
I think that's
Oh,
me.
okay. Yeah, back to Margie.
So we're sure that many of you have made an effort to swap out plastic items for ones that are non-plastic and have no plastic packaging. So feel free to share your strategies in the chat. I can't see it because I'm trying to move the slides, but Kim can, and she can share them with us later. So I'll cover a few areas of the house where plastic is often rampant. So in the kitchen, we have dish soap, detergent, cleaners that often come in plastic bottles. So we can seek alternatives. And here are just a few. Right? Instead of dishwashing soap in a plastic bottle, right, you can try a dishwashing block with, the natural bristle and wood scrubber. Instead of sponges, plastic sponges, which often contain harmful toxins like triclosan, which is a pesticide, choose natural vegetable cellulose sponges or coconut or walnut fiber scrubbers. They're pretty widely available. Definitely you can find them at the stores that Donna mentioned. Instead of plastic wrap, right, you can use beeswax wrap or even silicone container covers. I don't know if you've tried those, but if you haven't tried to make your own beeswax wrap, we may include it in an upcoming GreenTown Make Your Own Zero Waste Items event, which we'll announce at a later time, but I think that would be fun for everyone. So you can also do zero waste items, use zero waste items when you dine out or get takeout, right? Ask your local restaurant if they will allow you to take your own container for leftovers, like coffee shops do for reusable mugs. COVID made this a little more difficult, but restaurants are relaxing a little bit more. So for zero waste grocery shopping, Donna mentioned, your reusable cotton mesh produce bags, your tote bags, your refillable jars, right? Sprouts is great for that. And Whole Foods used to have some, but changed during COVID. But make sure you put these items near the front door or in the car or in a pannier of your bike. So after you're done shopping, so they're right there when you want to go out for your next shopping trip. It's nice to kind of make sure they're handy. And when you're in the grocery store, instead of choosing eggs, for example, in plastic, of which there are an increasing number, get eggs in fiberboard, which is both recyclable and compostable. Better yet, one of the vendors at the Mountain View Farmers Market takes back egg cartons so that you and others can reuse them, which is wonderful. Ice cream is better in paper too. So don't choose melons that are individually wrapped in plastic netting. So here are choice: plastic or paper. Once again, strawberries in plastic clamshell containers and grapes in paperboard. And the grapes win, right? Better yet, bring your own bag, your produce bags to the farmer's market. You get the idea. There are definitely lots of options, right, for going zero waste. In the bathroom, there are a lot more choices as well, from razor blades to face lotion in glass containers instead of in plastic. So one example is shampoos. I mean, if you look at the CVS or the Walgreens, they're just lining the shelves with shampoos and conditioners in plastic bottles. And instead, you can try a bar of soap or a bar of conditioner. And I'm sure there are folks on the Zoom tonight who have their favorites. I have my own favorite, but that's a great zero waste option for the bathroom. And also, that plastic tube, those are a thing of the past, we hope, right? New toothpaste tabs have entered the stage, and you chew on them and they create paste in their mouth, right? And most come in recyclable or reusable containers, which is great.
Oh, I have to jump in here. This is my favorite. Look at the amount of plastic you can save simply by buying your antacid tablets wrapped in paper rather than plastic.
So that brings us to laundry, right? So one of the least well-known zero waste items is soap nuts. All right, those are the brown nuts in the bottom left-hand corner. Kim Jelfs of GreenTown swears by them. You put 4 or 5 in a little cotton bag and chuck them in your laundry. You can use them 3 or 4 times and then toss them in the compost, maybe even more. So that's innovation by nature, right? And here's your opportunity to replace those big old plastic jugs of laundry detergent with small strips. There are 32 loads that fit in that small envelope on the right, and they work great. Or you can make your own with simple ingredients that you probably already have on hand. Which brings us generally to zero waste cleaning products with ingredients like baking soda and vinegar, Castile soap, and essential oils. And a few maybe glass spray bottles, right? You can make your own cleaning products for all sorts of things with simple ingredients that you probably have on hand or are very cheap and easy to get at the market. So once you've tried out a few swaps, consider helping your friends and loved ones on their plastic-free journey by making some or getting secondhand or buying some plastic-free items for holiday or for birthday gifts. Holidays are not too far away at this point, and helping people go plastic-free is a great goal at holiday times. So again, we'd love to hear in the chat box what you're doing to go plastic-free. Here, these were just a sort of smattering of ideas. I hope some of these inspired you to make some changes in your personal choices. And I'll turn it over to Donna to introduce Heidi, who will focus on even greater impact.
Great, Margie, thank you. That was really inspiring, and I think that's given people a lot, and I see a lot of great ideas were put in the chat box, so maybe we'll have a chance to come back to some of those towards the end.
The chat box is lighting up, so keep them coming. We're getting
yeah,
some great resources in there.
We're educating each other. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to have with us tonight Heidi Sanborn, and since we've been focusing on all these things that we can do at an individual level, we also have to really think about what collectively we can do to have a bigger impact with legislation and policy and ordinances, even here in Los Altos. So it's a great pleasure to have Heidi with us tonight, and I'm going to turn off the screen share and get Heidi's slides up, and Heidi, take it away.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's such an honor to be here with you all tonight. I feel like I'm with my people. You are giving presentations that, I've seen professionals not do as well as you just did. So thank you for having me. And I'm very excited to share with you what we're doing. I am a little background about me. I'm a lifelong environmentalist. My parents are both scientists. My dad's a postdoc in chemistry. My mother's a biologist. And so I've kind of become the political scientist in the family because I realized that all the good science in the world wasn't translating into good policy. And that's hurting us when we don't have good policymakers that understand science. So that's the world I live in. And I try to make as big of an impact as possible because we're running out of time. As we all know, the climate's in big trouble. We're quite frankly in big trouble in a whole lot of levels environmentally. So There's a lot we can do though, especially when a lot of committed people get together. So I'm very excited to be here and talk to you about what we did this year here in California and how it's having national and international impact. My organization is called the National Stewardship Action Council. I formed it in 2015 to take all the lessons we were learning from California's legislation, where I focused my 12 years before that on the California Product Stewardship Council, which I formed. So I formed these nonprofits to kind of tackle all these big policy issues and push the needle, because we didn't have anybody out there doing it that was being effective. So we had so much response with the California Product Stewardship Council on getting the producers to be more responsible. I decided we needed to take that to the national level and then hopefully start translating California policy into national policy, where we can really have a big impact. So our goal is that the United States attains the circular economy that we just heard Margie talk about. And we were very effective this year. And I think we're going to have an even bigger year next year. So I'm excited to share it with you. And just a little about us. Right now we have 11 board members. We're very focused on, after George Floyd, I was horrified, and we went out and did a call and got some wonderful new people to our board and really diversified our demographics. And I encourage everybody to do that, because we're not going to make good policy that's caring about people if they don't all have a seat at the table. So anyway, we've got board members from, David's up in Washington State, and Michael is in the city of Los Angeles, Maya's in Texas, Beverly's in Colorado. We're from all over the country, and we're all working together to drive a circular economy. And we collaborate with big companies, with small companies, recyclers, neighborhood groups, town groups like yours, anybody who wants to work towards getting us out of this mess of make, take, waste that's creating climate change. That's really at the root of it all. And I speak around the world on these things. This is me presenting at the Environmental Council of the States meeting. And at that meeting, I immediately was following, our panel followed Secretary Wheeler at the time, who had just given a presentation about why the plastics were not a problem in the United States. They're entering the ocean from Southeast Asia. So the first thing I said was, remember where Southeast Asia is getting all their plastic. It's from us. We've been shipping it there and calling it recycling. So we have to really, the finger, when you point one at others, it's three coming back at you. And that's really where we are. We've got to change our ways, as you've said. So we've got to think differently. We've got to think about a circular economy. And insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. So I do want to get into what is a circular economy. And we did touch on this already, but the reason it's important is because it's being hijacked. And I want to make sure you're all educated so you can help push back when people say, okay, well, we're going to do a chemical recycling plant and we're going to recycle plastics into fuel. That is not a circular economy. So a circular economy is based on three things. It's regenerating natural systems. Is there anything you can think of about recycling plastic that is regenerative of natural systems? I can't think of any. So recycling, as you said, is not enough, especially if something that's so extractive and so damaging to the environment in the first place. But that's number one. Number two is designing out waste and pollution. And then the third thing is keeping products and materials in use. And what companies are doing is taking number three and saying, well, if we just keep it in a circle and going in use, then it's circular. I've literally listened to lobbyists say, well, you shouldn't be talking about getting PFAS out of recyclable plastics. That's not a recyclability issue. Yes, it is, because I don't want to keep toxics in motion.
Yeah,
That's not what we're trying to keep in motion. So we have to be very careful not to let this be hijacked. And what does that look like? And this is a great example. This is a company that's making beer out of Florida, and they've literally taken their old hops and made new 6-pack rings that literally are fish food. That is regenerative. That's saying I'm taking something and just, it's back in the food cycle. It's not a danger to anything. It's regenerative. But how often do we see this? Not nearly enough. And that's why we're in the trouble we're in, which is why the climate report that just came out is so devastating. And when it came out on the news, it barely got a blip. But it's not a joke when scientists are telling us we're in code red. What they're telling us is we are literally at the precipice of complete disaster here. And I don't know if you heard, but even just today, yet last week it rained on Greenland for the first time. And today they found a crack in the last largest, thickest ice sheet in the world. This is not a joke. We literally could have ice sheets slipping off and flooding all of Nern in Europe in the not so distant future. And scientists thought this was all 170 years out. It's here. So what is extended producer responsibility? And I'm going to get into this very briefly because I'm going to talk about it more, but in the policies, but you did explain beautifully that voluntary does not work. We've tried it 1,000 times and it doesn't work. People, we need to remove things from the market, or we need to have mandatory programs with performance targets. That's really the only way things have worked. And when I say mandatory programs for producers, that means that I like, for very good reason, I'll explain, that the costs of recycling and the whole management of a product to be internalized in the cost of the product, not a visible fee. The reason is very simple. If you look at it's always follow the money, and the producers report quarterly to shareholders. They get beat up for having high line item costs on their expenses. If the expense line item for recycling their product is really high, they get told, get that down. Well, how do you get that down? You can redesign it. You can make it out of something that's less toxic, that's more recyclable, that's compostable. It gives them a financial reason to change the product itself, make it more durable. For example, if it's more durable or repairable, it doesn't come back as much to manage. That can get your costs down. So with a true internalized cost producer run program, we found that they can change design, but the problem is we're not doing that often enough. And I'll explain that a little bit with the paint program and carpet and mattresses as well. But really, the government should only be setting the performance standards, leveling the playing field, and then ensuring transparency and enforcement. So in California, we have these different programs. Of course, our bottle bill has a little bit of producer responsibility, not much. They don't run the program. They don't pay in nearly enough. We do it for ag pesticide containers, recalled products, mercury thermostats. I just updated that bill to have the largest bounty in the country. So starting, it should be late next year, you're going to be getting $30 cash if you turn in a mercury thermostat. Those old mercury thermostats right now, you're getting $0. It's a free program, but it's not being used enough. So we're putting a bounty on them. Paint, carpet, and mattresses all pass within a few years early on. They all have a visible fee. They're not driving green design at all, but they are encouraging recycling and taking some costs off of government, but that can't be the sole goal. And then I passed the big one in medicine and needles in 2018. And we actually got the manufacturers to agree to take back needles and medicines statewide. That program literally starts next year. They're reviewing stewardship plans right now. And that'll be the biggest in the country by far. And the reason we got them is because we passed 11 ordinances. One was in San Mateo. It was like, I think the third or fourth that I passed there in San Mateo. And with your county supervisor's unanimous support, that drove the industry to the table to want a harmonized rule. And the first one we passed was in Alameda. And this was the first time a local government had said, hey, producers, you're going to be responsible for this medicines. We've got a drug epidemic. We need to get these managed properly, and we don't want them flushed. The industry said, oh, no, you're not doing that to us here. So we're going to sue you, and we're going to take you all the way to the Supreme Court. And they did, and they lost. And it took 3 years and a lot of fights. And I was even on the phone with the attorneys. It was a very big deal. The guy who defended the hanging Chad case actually defended pharma. and they lost. So what that did was change the entire rules of the road in the nation, that even a local government like the city of Los Altos could make a producer take back their product if there was a health and safety issue involved. And I now believe that we have enough information about plastics that packaging hits that mark. I wasn't sure until recently, but the more I know about endocrine disruptors and everything else, I do believe that that's the case. So again, think globally, but act locally. You've already got a lot going on in your county. You're already very progressive. You've got a lot of educated people there that care. So you've done a lot of good work. Medications and sharps, I helped roll that out there years ago, but you're going to get more with this new law passing. Bag bans, straws, but now, and we're working now, what's coming up is batteries, tobacco waste, and other things, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I'll tell you, I've done a lot of local ordinances. If you find one that you think you really want to take on, like, for example, vaping products, very bad product, battery, tobacco or cannabis, and electronics, and they're ending up in the trash and starting fires. If you're interested in doing ordinances, let me know. I'm really good at them and rallying the troops to get them passed. The other thing is I chair the State Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling. We made 30 policy recommendations to the legislature and Cal EPA in a year, and many of them became law this year. We're very, very proud of this commission. They worked very, very hard for a year. We all did, and submitted almost 200-page report, and that was all voluntary. And it was required that we have unanimous agreement, which never happens really, that many people. And we had waste management, recology, the recyclers, local governments, and nonprofits like myself. And my co-chair is Richard Valle, who's county supervisor in Alameda, wonderful to work with. And another thing that I've done, and I'm giving you a little background that I think has led to the success of this year. One was the commission, because we came up with all these unanimous recommendations that gave a lot of support to legislators to take action and know that they had a lot of support for those actions. The other thing that I've been doing is 3 years ago, I actually raised $100,000 and joined the California Foundation for the Environment and the Economy. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just knew I had to, because I needed to get legislators on study trips to see how it goes in other countries in order for them to really understand that the lobbyists were telling them lies. It wasn't true what they were being told, that they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. They do it all day long in Europe and in Canada. I needed to show them. So we started a study trip. The foundation takes legislators on study trips, and they were doing everything except waste management. They were doing energy, water, more other things, but not this. So I set the whole thing up. I helped them organize it, and it changed everything. Even though we only had on this first trip in 2019, 7 legislators and some staff and others, like Secretary Jared Blumenfeld's on the far right from Cal EPA. State Treasurer Ma is in the middle. She cares about this a lot too. It changed everything, because when they came back, they were telling all their colleagues, whoa, we were being lied to. This can happen. They do this, like this works up in Vancouver. And they also learned that how far behind we are. Our friends to the north it's an EPR paradise up there. They have pesticides, paint, electronics, oil, gas, waste gas, packaging, pretty much everything is under EPR up there. The producers pay and run systems all over Canada. And they don't have near the density that we have. We're far more dense and efficient to do it here. So I wanted to show you that. And this is the trip we literally just got back on from last month. We were there 3 weeks ago. And this is me with, on the left, Assemblymember Petri Norris. She is probably the most targeted Democratic seat in the state. She is in Laguna Niguel, just had the terrible oil spill. And she really liked this model. So for the bottle bill, we've got a problem with access, so take back. This is literally a producer-run program called Return It. And this is a big reconstituted container in a parking lot of a grocery store that's unmanned, very clean. You just swipe your phone with your QR code into the computer and tell it how many bags of recyclables you have, and it prints out a sticker. You put it on the bags and you just put it in the chute. And within 24 hours, all that money's back on your credit card. That's it. Very simple. We make things way too complicated. And then now we can't do about this. They actually, producers are paying the grocers $500 a month to put it there instead of making the grocers be responsible. That's why they fight it here. So we've got to get out of our box. And by the way, you'll see down here, milk in all kinds of containers is included in their bottle bill, as well as the spirits, wine and spirits, and the little nip containers that get thrown out all over the place. So this is me and my staff, Jordan Wells, who was on the trip, and we were at a different type of drop-off location. This one included, it was walk-in, and it included even things like batteries and mercury lamps and small appliances even they take back at a drop-off in the community. And they have these cute little Sarah Cask and all these cute little logos and things. They're much more creative than we are. And quite frankly, they make recycling more fun. So I think we can learn from them. Senator Ben Allen has been a real champion on these issues. He's out of Santa Barbara and, I'm sorry, Santa Monica. And he's the one who came on the trip, and I talked to him about starting the concept of working together as legislators, because we needed to have, they needed support of each other, getting these hard bills passed. And we as advocates had to get our act together and be much more aligned as well, because there are NGOs that fight each other for space and money and don't necessarily do the best job getting the right thing done. So he did his part. He organized the legislators and they came up with a circular economy package. And I was on their weekly calls as they all talked amongst their different offices on the strategies to get these bills passed. It worked. It was really effective, because now we're acting like the opposition normally does, where they get together and they all organize and have marching orders. Now we do. So look at what we got done this year in California. We got AJR 4 done. This was a recommendation of the commission. I asked Assemblymember Garcia to do it. She did it, got done. What it says is that California supports the US ratifying the Basel Convention, which means that and asking the Biden administration to do it urgently, because we are one of the last industrialized countries that is not in it. And it would cause us to not send hazardous products like plastic to countries that can't handle it. We should be part of that, and we're not. So that got chaptered. Bill we co-sponsored, AB 818. We sponsored it with the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. We negotiated with Kimberly Clark, Procter & Gamble, to say you cannot call wipes flushable. They're just not. And they're plastic, they're microplastics getting in the water. So we got that passed just a couple weeks ago. Guess what? It's already in a national bill I'm working on, and it's got a Republican co-author. That gives us a good chance at making sure that's going to go. So these things shouldn't be partisan either, even though they tend to be. Then we passed 881. This was also a recommendation of the commission. This reclassifies the export of mixed plastic wastes so that you can't call it recyclable if it's not going to a country that can verify it's truly recycled. So that's another good one for plastics. AB 962, many of us probably remember refillable bottles. This allows them to come back to the bottle bill. Our current bottle bill had banned that from happening for 30 years. It required the crushing of glass bottles to get them canceled out for their deposit, which is insane. So we got rid of that, and now we're encouraging refillables. We also passed AB 1200. This is a big one. This is saying that you can't sell any product with food packaging that contains those nasty PFAS chemicals that Donna mentioned that are so dangerous. I don't know if you know, but literally on the paper that's your burgers are on, that slippery stuff is PFAS. So if you take your ketchup and you dip your burger in there or your fries, you're getting a whole bunch of it, and it doesn't ever leave your body, and it's cancer causing. So why are these things not labeled? How can we protect ourselves when the government is not ensuring truth in labeling? And that's where I'm going next. We had AB 1201 pass, which is the truth in labeling bill for what is compostable. That was another recommendation of the commission. We also had AB 1276 pass, which prohibits food facilities from providing single-use foodware unless it's been requested by the consumer. So that's source reduction. Then AB 416, this one is a good one, trying to get, let me see this one. Oh, this is the state agencies. I'm sorry, commodities around now. Oh, the forest risk, yeah. This one actually did not pass. We wanted it to. It was going to mandate that we don't buy products from forests that were being deforested. And I don't know why she put chaptered here, because it didn't get, well, actually, I'm sorry. It got chaptered, the governor vetoed it. And we were very, very sad about that. But we got close, so we're still working on it. Then Assembly members Friedman, AB 652, this one prohibits the sale, again, of any juvenile product that has PFAS in it. Then we worked with Assembly member Quirk. We passed AB 707, that's the $30 incentive for mercury, and 1346, which requires the regulations to prohibit. This is really exciting. This is about gas and noise, the air pollution. I worked on this one, and my other hat is I'm an elected official on the Sacramento Municipal Utility District Board, and we have the goal of getting to zero carbon emissions by 2030, first in the nation for any utility. This was important to me because those landscape equipment is some of the most polluting equipment there is out there now. It's surpassing cars. They have no emission controls, two-stroke engines, very high pollution from landscaping equipment. So this will ban the sale of that by 2024. But back to recycling. So the big one, SB 343, we co-sponsored this. This prohibits the use of the chasing arrow on anything that is not truly recyclable. And if that sounds obvious and easy, it might be obvious to us, but it definitely was not easy. The companies came out with the guns blaring. Yeah. It took everything we had to get this thing over the line. I had literally 19 lobbyists we were organizing every morning for the last week of session to get this bill passed and signed. And I had Recology, Republic, the big waste haulers, Waste Management. They were all there because what's happening is you all look at something, you see the chasing arrow, you think it's recyclable, throw it in the recycle bin, and then we have to sort it all out because it's not recyclable, which costs us a lot of money, and the stuff still gets to the landfill. So you're buying it thinking it's a good thing, and it's not. So again, truth in labeling has become a very big thing for us. This bill also says you can't put PFAS, inks, adhesives, or labels that prevent recyclability and get to use the chasing arrow. This bill is a big, big deal. It's such a big deal. I was quoted in the New York Times. The New York Times actually did a big story on this and said that we're setting the pace for the nation, that nobody should be able to lie to the public, is my quote. So we're doing a lot in here. We've also worked in New York, Washington. We're working in other states on these I love these pictures, these people just dying in the aisles because they have to read all these things. But next year, here's what we're going to need help with. And we need you guys to help be our army, is we've got to get SB 54 passed. This is Senator Allen's bill. That's the big omnibus bill on plastics. And I'm working with them now. I'm helping them try to do the same sort of strategy that has led to great success this year. This is going to be really hard. The chasing arrow they thought was going to be easy. I warned them it wasn't. They know this is going to be hard. I'm telling them it's barely passable with everything we've got at it. So we need to get all of you helping us. And we also have a ballot initiative coming. This one is going to be on the November ballot. And I have mixed feelings about this because it's a great outline, but it's pretty loose. And I'm very worried it could also be challenged in court for years and years and years. So I'd much rather get SB 54 passed this year. If we get it done before August, they can pull it off of the ballot. And I can assure you the plastics manufacturers and oil companies are going to fight this like heck. And they're probably going to throw a couple $100 million at a campaign, which could confuse the public to vote the wrong way. So I'd much rather get the bill passed in the legislature. We also have, and this bill again I should continue, it says that there's revenue from Cal Recycle, there's revenue for all these nonprofits. It's going to put a one set fee on every item sold. It's going to be used as it's going to be nasty fight. So we'll see what happens there. Maine signed the first packaging EPR law in the nation this year. And I helped them. I work with their legislators. They're wonderful. We might go see them next year on our study trip with the legislators. So legislator to legislator conversations can happen. But they are ahead of us now. And they're giving money back to local governments to clean up litter and also to help improve their recycling systems. The Oregon bill passed second. That's also, so the second EPR bill. So we thought of it first. We introduced it first, but we're not first. So Oregon's is slightly different, and they're not going to make the producers pay for collection costs, which I don't know how that's going to work. We'll just have to see, but it's a good, still the producers are paying close attention. So Maine's law requires consumer brands to cover all recycling costs. And the Oregon law, the producers do not have to cover collection costs. Maine's is going to take effect mid-2024 and Oregon's is mid-2025. And then other states we're working with are Hawaii and Illinois and Massachusetts on all different kinds of things. And I do want to highlight here in the bottom right, that's Tina Angelina with the pink mask. She's pointing at the red Solo cup in the street. They had pretty much no litter in all of Vancouver. I think that was the only thing we saw, but it happened to be the red Solo cup that she is the most aggravated about because they're used so widely and they have a chasing arrow. They will not be able to use the chasing arrow anymore on that cup now that we got that bill passed. So here's where EPR is in the world and where it isn't. And you can see for packaging, we barely just got our 2 states, which aren't even blue there yet, but Brazil's ahead of us, Australia, Congo. I mean, we're not Congo. I don't know which one that is in Africa. I shouldn't say that, but most of Europe and Asia. The other big thing that's happening, so now nationally, California is the mover and shaker. We're 40 million people. What we do matters to brands. They usually change their entire line because of us. But we do need national bills. The Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act was what I call an omnibus bill. It has everything in the kitchen sink in it. It's like the Ecotopia dream list. However, it's not passable. So what's happening is, as things are ready, we pull them out of that bill and plop them into a separate bill to run on its own. That's what we did with the wipes bill. That's also what we're doing with the bottle bill. 40 states don't have a bottle bill, so that's another big thing we're working on because we're losing a lot of material with 40 states without having a bottle bill. And so again, the wipes bill. This is Senate Representative McLean and Lowenthal. And if you would like to help us get this passed, you can write letters of support. Here, we've got a model letter, a press release, and we'd love to have your help getting this done at the national level. Your sanitation agencies would love it. This is a picture on the right of the actual, what it looks like in Houston Bay every single day. The billionaire that lives in this particular part, he actually pays this guy $1 million a year to go out and suck up with a machine he created all of this litter that floats on the bay every single day. That's how out of control this has gotten. And it's all going into the Gulf. The reason they're doing it is not just because it's ugly, but it's literally getting pulled up in the barges. So when they're trying to put out boat fires, they can't. It's clogging the fireboat. So again, don't even want to think about what's happening to wildlife and what's below the surface, but that's really a driver for the bottle bill. Pepsi and others are finally coming to the table, and thanks to shareholder resolutions and pressure from their shareholders, they're finally saying they're going to reduce their virgin plastic by 50% and increase their recycled content. But however, they can't get recycled content if we don't have collection systems in the country. So if you're interested in helping at all, you can donate online, and we have a form. We have started an End Litter Now pack that is used exclusively for funding this effort. and it's expensive. It costs me about $50,000 a month for the attorneys and lobbyists and the PR firm. And this hasn't even been introduced yet. It's going to get introduced next month. So if you can help us, please do. I won't talk about the eco fees yet. I do want to just mention briefly, certified B Corps are a really cool thing, but they're expensive and not for every business. But the more we can get businesses to align people and planet with profit, we're going to do fine. The problem now is in our country, it only matters that they make money at the expense of people and planet. That's the fundamental problem. So we've got to get that switched. So I would say our industry and the waste industry, we can probably do more for climate, for biodiversity, for water pollution, air pollution, and forest deforestation than almost any other industry. We can do a lot together if we fix this waste system. So next year, we're running bills on, again, the packaging. We've got a national bottle bill. We're running a bill, it looks like, on tobacco and vaping products, that they should be banned from sale if they're single use and required to have a take back program if they're reusable. We might deal with synthetic turf, a huge new microplastics problem. Please do not buy it and use it and put it outside. All kinds of chemicals in it. Don't even have time to talk about that today. Batteries are a big problem. They're ending up in the waste, starting fires and causing a lot of damage. Truth in labeling, we're going to stay on this until every label is truthful. We are not going to stop because it's confusing the public and causing a lot of problems with contamination and disposal. We're going to increase, again, the voluntary safe medicine disposal programs with national retailers. We're still working on legislation for carpet, mattresses, and paint in other states. And we're focusing on right to repair. We just had a big win. Microsoft has finally agreed they're going to start focusing on right to repair and giving manuals out again. So what you can do, model behavior. You got a great bunch of examples today on what to do to just model the behavior and teach others. Collect data. If you want to pass an ordinance locally or you want to do something, get the data to tell the story and take pictures. They speak 1,000 words. Find allies, particularly political champions. Those are the ones that will help us get things done. And you can write letters, you can do op-eds, but understanding the political process is important. I can help you with that. That's what I do. And you can send letters of support. We ask for all those things. All of our members get that list on our listservs. And make sure you know your legislators and they know you. You've got Senator Josh Becker and Assemblymember Mark Berman. They're both very good. And make sure that they know you're there to help them. And Senator or Assemblymember Berman is carrying the really hard battery bill this year. He needs a lot of support. I'm afraid he's going to get a lot of opposition from some of the big companies in your area. So make sure he knows that you've got his back. So if you join groups like ours, what we do is we actually have free trainings. I had a free training on August 30th for all our members to help us figure out how to get these bills done. I think I opened it up to the whole world but I need the money. This is very, very expensive. It costs us about, just so you know, about $150,000 per bill per year to run a bill. And that's on the cheap side. So our lobbyist alone is almost $10,000 a month. So, that's, we have to have him. He's great. So this is how you can join. There's all kinds of different levels. Individual memberships, only $150 a year. You get all kinds of free webinars and newsletters, and especially in California, we can help you a lot. And if you wanted to do local stuff, we can help with that. So don't be afraid, make some noise, get in some trouble. It's good. It's necessary trouble. And we're here to help you. So you can follow us on social media, and really appreciate your time. I hope that was helpful.
Heidi, that was more than helpful. that was really, really terrific. I'm so glad you are leading the team of people that are doing that hard work, because we really need people like you to save this planet, honestly. And thank you for all that practical information about how we can get involved. We'll incorporate some of this, I think, into our email packet that's going to go out to everybody. So we'll all stay connected. So now, what I think we have a time for, we're a little bit at the end, but I think it's really important to give people a chance to ask some questions. So Kim, let's try to do at least 5 minutes or so of questions.
Well,
And
I think, Donna, we have a super informed audience. It's not so much questions, but fantastic resources. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the chat box, I do encourage you to go and have a look. People have been sharing great tips, great places where they're finding stores that accept containers and are moving towards zero waste. We had one question at the beginning from Bill, which Heidi very kindly answered. He had heard that with microplastics getting into the food chain, we eat the equivalent of a credit card worth of plastic every week, and asked if it was true. And unfortunately, horrendously, Heidi came back and said, yes, that is true. So whatever we can do to help this situation, it obviously behooves all of us to be working towards that. And of course, being a British person, I'm very sad to learn that a lot of tea bags have plastic. So a few people were suggesting loose tea or different ways of doing tea. I do try to buy mine in paper so that I can compost them. Some great resources. People are finding all sorts of clothing brands that are moving towards having less impact on the planet. Athleta, apparently, I don't know how to pronounce that properly, Athleta has recycled plastic in their clothing. I recently found some in Target from Hanes, of all people. You don't have to go too far to find good resources. And another one, a couple of people mentioned, there's also Outer Known, which was done by the surfer Kelly Slater. That's another clothing company. A shout out for Zero Waste Chef, our good colleague Anne-Marie Bonneau, who apparently lives around the corner from me in Sunnyvale, I just found out. She has a great new book out about zero waste tips for the kitchen. And again, a great suggestion, please buy it from a local bookstore. This is something that you don't have to get online, and support your local small business would be awesome. She also has a great Instagram blog that I follow. I'm not a great chef, so I can't say I follow all the recipes, but it looks amazing. And the food waste tips are excellent there. Some home-based businesses. We have one in Morgan Hill called the Filler Up Shop that I had not heard about. You can bring your own containers. A couple of people have done a shout out for True Earth. These are laundry sheets that dissolve in water. So no plastic. I'm getting a thumbs up from Donna. I think she's tried them. We gave them away recently as a prize in one of my neighborhood sustainability challenges, and they were very, very popular. A few people nodding, I can see. A couple of people have mentioned Grove, which is an online store where you can get all sorts of cleaning, laundry products. There's Reach and Teach in San Mateo. Just the Goods apparently has lotions in aluminum containers, all sorts of things. So do take a look through the chat box. A few people are suggesting places where we can take electronics to be recycled. I know my local Best Buy does, and Darshana also mentioned Staples, and a lot of those are free of charge too. And then just huge thanks to our panel and our speakers tonight. I think we've all learned a lot and all been greatly inspired. Just make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, and try to buy clothing from organic cotton. People don't always realize how much plastic there is in clothing and textiles. That's one thing we tend to forget about. So that's a great tip there. And yep, as Bill pointed out, if anyone wants to copy the chat and take all these resources home, we highly encourage you to do so. That's all we have from the chat box.
Kim, that's really great. What a sharing evening this has been. I would just make a quick comment that I don't know if any of you folks are entrepreneurs, but I would love to see Los Altos have a refill shop or something along the lines of the ecology store. I think we have enough interest here, and I think we have enough money here, and just throwing that out there as an idea for those of you in the business world. So I think we're
And
about
I can add to that. My friend Sloan runs Refill Madness here in Sacramento, and she just opened a new one in Sonoma. So she's supporting the gal who's owning it and running it there, but she'd be happy to set somebody up because that's her. She wants to help set these up all over the country.
wow.
Great idea.
I think that is a terrific idea. So I think we'll wrap things up, and we have one last very quick thing that Margie's going to do. We do have a prize for one of you who has participated tonight, and I'll turn it over to Margie so that she can do the job of picking our winner. So you should see, if you registered, your name would be on that wheel. She's going to spin the wheel, and we're going to find out who's going to win our package.
All righty, here we go.
That's a really cool program.
I know, I really like that. All right, hopefully the person is on the line.
All right, Anna Agan.
Anna, are you on tonight? Can you unmute yourself? Uh-oh. Did we say the person
on
has to be
earlier.
on the,
Well, should we contact her or should we, would you rather roll again? Oh yeah, I see Bob saying roll again. Here we go. Okay, the wheel of names. All right, we have Colleen Woodson.
yay.
Congratulations.
Oh my goodness. You know, I feel kind of bad because the first person was on for a while and then dropped off. So I'm happy to have it go to her.
Oh, you're very generous. Well, we'll settle it offline.